your seats. Dear delegates, please take your seats and let us keep silence so that we can start this session. On behalf of the Global Task Force of Local and Regional Governments, I am very pleased to welcome you all to the World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments that is gathering today at the eve of the high-level meeting on the implementation of the new urban agenda that is convened by His Excellency the President of the General Assembly. And indeed, the Presidency of Hope that he represents has led the work of the global organizations of local and regional governments that are working to contribute to the achievement of the global agendas. We are gathered here today with a delegation of over 30 mayors and governors from around the world. We have been discussing our key messages, and we are very pleased that we have in attendance very high-level representation of the United Nations. I would like to start inviting His Excellency Abdullah Shahid, President of the United Nations General Assembly, to address us all. President, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, I thank the Global Task Force on Local and Regional Governments for convening this meeting. Today's discussion emulates the spirit of the General Assembly. This is the place where leaders at global, regional, and local levels meet to discuss ideas and reach consensus, where mayors and representatives come together to share the concerns of local communities. By doing so, we can identify challenges that are common to such communities and mobilize effective partnerships to resolve them. Colleagues, such partnerships are always better facilitated through in-person dialogue and interaction, and it is for this reason that I persistently advocated for a gradual and safe return to in-person meetings at the General Assembly. It is heartening to once again see side events such as this one, where decision makers can meet and shake on a decision face-to-face. I take this opportunity to thank the Global Task Force and all the members of my Advisory Committee on Sustainable Urbanization for their support. The committee has helped my office develop strategies to ensure that the outcomes of the new Urban Agenda meeting, which I will convene at the General Assembly tomorrow, carry momentum going forward. Dear colleagues, I do not need to tell you about the importance of cities to the implementation of the SDGs and to ensuring the success of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. What I will do is implore you to help ensure that 2022 becomes a milestone year in upscaling rapid and universal implementation of the new urban agenda in both developing and developed countries. Because we need your support to ensure that cities continue to play a vital role in helping us respond to the needs of the planet and to help protect future generations from the consequences of climate change. Likewise, cities and mayors must be empowered to fulfill their role as first responders who can salvage the sustainable development goals in the face of multiple ongoing crises that are shaking our world, socio-politically, economically, and environmentally. They will need assistance with planning, financing, and implementing sustainable infrastructure projects. Such projects need to be bold and forward-looking. The time for short-term and unambitious thinking is long, long past. Excellencies, as we look to build a better future, the scale of effort required might look daunting. However, we must always remember that we have the financial and technological capacity to succeed. All we require is the political will With it, we can mobilize millions of urbanization professionals across the world, including architects, engineers, surveyors, urban planners, and more. And we can overcome the gaps hindering urgent action. In such endeavors, I have continuously advocated for a whole of government and whole of society approach, which partners and leverages the United Nations system at all levels. Your support is critical in this regard. I look forward to the key messages from today's discussions being taken forward in the General Assembly meeting tomorrow. And I wish you all a very rich and constructive dialogue. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this commitment to work together, for the call of help, and for calling all levels of government to work together. Important messages that I hope will resonate in the statements to be made later this afternoon. And now I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Colin Vixen Kelapile, President of ECOSOC.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, Your Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to join the President of the General Assembly to address this World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments. It is indeed fitting that we are meeting on the occasion of the high-level meeting of the implementation of the new urban agenda. Achieving the transformative vision of the 2030 Agenda requires a whole of government and a whole of society approach that embraces the role of local and regional governments. These subnational government authorities are critical to localizing the SDGs and fostering inclusive economic development and resilient communities. As an action-oriented document that sets global standards of achievement in sustainable urban development, the new urban agenda offers a roadmap to achieve SDG 11, and the localization of the SDGs advances the achievement of the new urban agenda. Your Excellencies, the COVID-19 pandemic has exerted a terrible toll in lives lost and livelihoods undone. Throughout the crisis, local and regional governments are providing the public goods and services that are critical for people's survival and well-being. Cities in particular have been the epicenter of the health emergency, and many have led the pandemic response measures and play a key role in the recovery process. Teachers, nurses, caregivers for the elderly, professions that are dominated by women have borne the brunt of the pandemic, as have the poor and people in vulnerable situations who are facing ever-increasing risk of being left further behind. As the world embarks on a still fragile recovery, the role of local and regional governments, acting in close coordination with national authorities, will be crucial to securing a sustainable and resilient path forward. Cities, glittering or gritty, have always been centers of commerce and innovation, holding out the possibility of opportunity and upward mobility. Yet too many urban areas are marked by entrenched and widening inequality, with stark and seemingly immovable divides between the haves and the have-nots. The promise of a sustainable and equitable urban future will not be met if people are left behind, fending for themselves on the margins of society. Local governments need to use all the public resources and tools at their disposal to create opportunities and secure inclusive and resilient development. Taking the SDGs to the territorial level confronts us with spatial inequalities, including urban-rural divides, which also need to be addressed. More can be done to strengthen institutional mechanisms that engage local governments in regional and global agendas, and to institutionalize national-local partnerships and multi-stakeholder dialogues in voluntary local reviews, for example, through national associations of local government. Placing housing and basic services at the core of implementation can help to mobilize the power of the cities to accelerate implementation of the 2030 Agenda. We must also prioritize the involvement of women in all aspects of local leadership and engage women, young people, and other stakeholders at all stages of the voluntary local reviews to deepen the ownership, integration, and delivery of the 2030 Agenda. Last week at the annual ECOSOC Youth Forum, the youth leaders from around the world engaged with representatives from governments, civil society, and the private sector. I took away a clear message of urgency, with the young people clamoring for change and expressing their impatience with business as usual. And at ECOSOC's special meeting on the implementation of the new urban agenda, we heard the gaps in building sustainable and inclusive cities that empower and support the poorest and the most vulnerable. We also heard about the support provided by the UN system in support of the new urban agenda. Tomorrow, I will share the key messages from the ECOSOC meeting with the General Assembly special meeting under the able leadership of the President of the General Assembly. SDG number 4 on education is one of the goals under review at the high-level political forum on sustainable development in July. Providing education is a core function of most local and regional governments, which are faced with overcoming the digital divide and learning deficits that were laid bare by the pandemic. Going forward, quality education and skills development are critical to building back better and thriving local and national economies. The other goals that are subject to in-depth review at the HLPF this year are SDGs number 5 on gender equality, SDG number 14 on life below water, SDG number 15 on life on land, and SDG number 17 on partnerships for the goals. It is of utmost importance that consideration must be given to the capacity and resource needs of local and regional governments. This year, the HLPF will also see 45 countries conducting voluntary national reviews, taking stock of progress on the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, and sharing lessons learned and good practices in achieving the SDGs. I am proud to say that Africa will field the largest share of voluntary national reviews this year, with a total of 21 member states presenting out of the 45. Increasingly, these national reviews are incorporating messages and lessons learned from their local and regional levels of government. The HLPF is increasingly giving a voice to local and regional governments, with a session on SDG implementation at the local level, as well as the annual local and regional government forum held as a special event. Time is running short to mobilize for a decade of action to deliver the promises of the SDGs by 2030, as called for by the Secretary General in his report on our common agenda. Concerted and collective action is needed from all sectors of societies and all levels of government to deliver on this global agenda. Disaggregation of data relating to sustainable development goals, indicators at the subnational level can facilitate local progress reviews and target interventions and investments that are needed to accelerate progress. I am convinced that local and regional governments will continue to be at the forefront of advancing the sustainable development agenda. I want to thank you again for this opportunity to participate at this very important meeting. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. Your words on how important the link is between urbanization, managing urbanization, and COVID recovery has been inspiring for us over the past weeks. And we certainly share with you the notion that sustainable development goals are very dependable on local public service provision. So thank you for your messages to our constituency. I am very pleased now to give the floor to Her Excellency Maimouna Moudsharif, UN Habitat Executive Director, and once a mayor, always a mayor, dear Executive Director. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Emilia, Excellencies, honorable ministers, honorable mayors, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. A very good afternoon to all of you. It is a great honor to be here with you in New York to open the World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments, nearly 6 years after the Habitat Tree Conference in Quito, where you all, together with me too, at that time, convened in huge numbers to witness and accompany the adoption of the new urban agenda. Allow me to thank the Global Task Force for Local and Regional Governments for bringing us all together here again. And as you know, World Assembly is one of the pillars upon which the follow-up and monitoring of the new urban agenda rests. As such, it is fitting that this World Assembly is held on the occasion of